One of the final acts of the Kirk session of St Meddan's Church was to record the story of a remarkable man, the one who researched and wrote about the church's famous stained glass window. Frederick Harrison, known to everyone simply as Fred, was born in Paisley Road West in Glasgow, near Ibrox Park, on the 13th of September 1932. When Fred was 7, his family moved to Prestwick, where his father worked in aircraft construction. He served his apprenticeship at P&W McClellan, a Glasgow engineering company, and studied at the Glasgow Technical College, now part of Strathclyde University. Over his career, Fred worked in a variety of engineering roles, eventually becoming a troubleshooter for a hydrology company, travelling across the country to solve problems that others couldn't. In 1956, Fred married Margaret. They shared nearly 50 years together before Margaret passed away in 2001. A devoted member and elder of St Meddan's Church, Fred joined the Property Committee in 2008. When the church received a lottery grant to restore its stained glass window, one of the conditions was to produce a book about the craftsman who created it, William Smith. Alec Kennedy, the Property Committee convener, asked Fred to take on the research. Fred accepted with enthusiasm and dedication, uncovering the fascinating story behind the man and his art. In 2024, Troon Heritage Online Recollections recorded Fred telling the story of the window in the sanctuary. A second recording was planned for early 2025, but sadly Fred's health began to fail, and he passed away on the 6th of August of that year. To honour his legacy, Fred's research lives on, through this video, through Troon TV, and through his book, The Genius in the Shadows. We're sitting here in this wonderful building of St Meddan's Church. It goes back to 1899. The congregation itself started off down at the harbour in a sail loft. But we're talking about this building today. And of course, I'm with this gentleman, Fred Harrison. Now, Fred has known this church for a long time. Indeed, his mum actually was in the church at one point. Now, today, we've got this magnificent window behind us. But I would like to ask Fred just how it got its reputation as the Penny Church.
The Penny Church. Well, I worked in my apprenticeship for an old-fashioned company, so I knew immediately what it was all about. On a Friday, you went up to a window in the counting house and put down your cheque with your number on it, and the clerk banged down a tin with your wages in it. And you took your wages out the tin, checked them, and there was a barrel in the middle of the yard with a hole in the top and a cowl over it, and you put your tin into the barrel. And St Meddan's was having bother getting financed, and the workers down at the shipyard, when they counted their wages from their tin, they threw the odd pennies onto the top of the barrel, and it became known as the Penny Church.
We also have a magnificent window sitting right up behind us. The only people that get the chance to see this window is the minister, the choir, and anybody reading the Bible or saying a prayer. So we would like to talk a little bit about how St Meddan's finished up under the Treasured Places of Scotland in 4th position. It would be tremendous if you could give us the history of this window and, in the process, explain to us how this book came about. Over to you, Fred.
Yes, well, in 2011, the Royal Commission for Ancient and Historic Works in Scotland had its centenary, And they thought of a very clever idea. They decided to have a competition, the 100 best places in Scotland. And of course this got people looking about, taking an interest, looking for something that they could put into the competition as a candidate. The first the congregation knew about this was when there was a news bulletin, and up came the St. Meddan's Church window. So it turned out that the chief executive of the Royal Commission, a lady called Eva Hamilton, she was in Troon on business, and she had some time to spare, so she walked about looking for places of interest, and she photographed that window, and on her own initiative she entered it in the competition, and as you said, it came in 4th place. So that was the first the people were really aware of the window, because it's difficult to see. If you're sitting in the church, your back's to the window, and if you're under the balcony, you don't see it at all. And you have to come down to the front of the church and look up over the balcony to get seeing it. Added to that, there was a pew right back against the window, which masked the bottom part, the garden part. So that was taken away, and the window was completely restored. The driving force behind that was Alec Kennedy, the convener of the property committee. He and his deputy, Sandy Scott, came down one night in a howling gale and worked well into the night, putting battens of wood behind the glass, because the window was really in a state of collapse. Gosh. So it was saved just in the nick of time. When the pew was removed, it was revealed that there was this beautiful garden with a stream flowing into a lily pond, and being south facing, the sun hits it, and the colours are wonderful. And the window was signed William Smith, 204 Marylebone Road.
William Smith was a very interesting man. Now, he worked subcontract for Clayton and Bell. What can you tell us about that, Fred?
Well, it took me a long time to find out exactly how this happened. William Smith was born in Hartington, the Peak District of Derbyshire, and he, at an early age, he obviously showed a great talent. He had a very talented uncle, James Frank Redfern, who was wonderful at carving, and the owner of the estate where his father worked sent him at his own expense to Paris to study, and he came back, and James Frank Redfern, he was sought after by Gilbert Scott, who at that time was doing the Albert Memorial in Hyde Park, and he got Frank Redfern to carve the 8 graces, 4 Christian and 4 lay, that are around the top of the Albert Memorial. These carvings were used for investment casting.
Gosh.
And the founder who did the investment casting said he'd never seen patterns like them. Yes, a very talented man, talented family. Now, he started encouraging William Smith, because he realized William had great talent. And William was apprenticed to a company called Thomas Potter and Sons
Thomas Potter, yes.
In London. And I found out later that the reason that he was apprenticed to them, they were the main contractor to an architect called G.E. Street. Now, Street and Frank Redfern were good friends. Frank Redfern did a great many statues and things, and reredos in churches and cathedrals for G.E. Street. Street was a professor at the Royal Academy. When he died, he was in the position of president of the Royal Institute of British Architects. He had won the Royal Gold Award medal for architecture, and he was the foremost architect in the country. As I say, Redfern did a lot of work for him, and it became obvious that William Smith was carefully groomed by them, taken into the Thomas Potter and Sons for his apprenticeship. I wondered why William Smith apparently came out of an apprenticeship into his own premises and worked for architects who were at the very peak of the profession. How could this be done? The architects that he worked for, I found 7 in all, they were people had been given titles. They were presidents of the Royal Institute of British Architects. They were Royal Gold Medal Award winners. So how could he do that, have a connection which many companies well established would envy? How could that be done? A young man in his early 20s. And the reason for that was that William Smith's uncle got him into an apprenticeship with Thomas Potter and Sons, who were the main contractor to G.E. Street. G.E. Street was the foremost architect of his time. He was buried in Westminster Abbey. And he was president of the Royal Institute of British Architects. He was a Royal Gold Medal Award winner. He was a professor at the Royal Academy. And his most famous work is the Royal Courts of Justice, just where the Strand meets Fleet Street.
Ah, yes, I know where you are.
And now, William Smith was working there with Thomas Potter and Sons. Frank Redfern, he died very young. He was only 38 when he died in 1876. And William still had a year of his apprenticeship to go. But Frank left William his workshops. And so William came straight out of his apprenticeship into his own workshop. His own, Now, Street valued his work. He watched him as an apprentice working there, and he took him on as a contractor. So from an apprentice straight into a contractor's job with the foremost architect of the country. Thomas Potter did all the forged metal, the wrought iron work in the Royal Courts of Justice, which is of a very high standard.
Yes.
There's a lot of it. And William did all the light fittings. Yes. He was excellent at working with copper sheet. So William was on his way. He worked for an architect called Calcutt, who had a contract with the P&O shipping line for decorating first-class accommodation. And P&O built the ships around shipyards around the country. They didn't have any yard that they particularly used. They used yards. And two ships that Calcutt definitely did the interior decoration for. In the dining room, the libraries, the music room, were built at Gourock. So in William Smith's catalogues, there's photographs of light fittings, and if you examine them carefully, they're aboard ships, passenger ships. So it's quite, I think it's pretty certain that that brought him up to Gourock, to Scotland. He would make contacts with the fitting out fraternity, who moved from one shipyard to another as the ship was completed and the fitting out work had to be done. And so he'd make contacts there, and I think that would bring him to Troon. I checked.
Own shipyard, Ailsa shipyard.
Yes.
Right.
To Troon. I checked out at the archive at Auchencruive in Ayr, and Ailsa Shipbuilding, Troon built two ships, two sister ships, which were fast cargo vessels, probably with passenger accommodation, and they had Indian names. They were built for trading with India. Later, 1889, they built another two sister ships. Same thing, fast cargo ships with some passenger accommodation. So that would bring William into Troon.
Now, just across from here.
Yes, he stayed at he would stay at the Mar Lodge Hotel.
Yes.
And at that time, this church would be nearing completion, and James Gillies would be around supervising the work, and no doubt they met, and they were both very keen on Freemasonry.
Right.
So that would consolidate the friendship. So William met James Gillies.
Now, James Gillies was the first provost of Troon.
Yes, he was.
And that would obviously mean he was relatively wealthy.
Yes. His home was Craiglee, a big house in South Beach. He was a prosperous man. He was a coal merchant, and they shipped the coal out from Troon to Ireland from the local mines. Troon was quite a busy wee harbour then. In January 1892, James Gillies, who was chairman of the board of managers of this church, this was a bigger church to accommodate a growing congregation. And he was chairman of the board of managers. And at the meeting in January 1892, he laid before the board of managers a drawing of a stained glass window, a colour drawing, which was sent up by William Smith at his request. I wondered at the time why he should go to a London glazier and stained glass window painter when Glasgow was a veritable hub of industry.
Yes.
And the foremost of Art Nouveau and so William Smith sent a drawing to him of the window. The subject of in the window was Jairus raising, Christ raising Jairus' daughter from the dead. That was William, that was James Gillies' favourite story, Bible story. So the board accepted the drawing, the offer of the window, unanimously. And so the window was completed and handed over to the congregation at a ceremony on the 19th of September, 1892. William Smith was present at that meeting and spoke at the end of the meeting, thanking the speakers for their flattering comments.
The original window, Fred, it wasn't a stained glass window. It was cathedral lights.
Yes, I would call them cathedral panes, leaded cathedral panes, but the experts call them lights. When James Gillies was standing probably around where we are just now, looking at the church, nearing completion, he looked at that window and thought that it would be a good idea to have a coloured window, to have a stained glass window. Stained glass windows were thin in the ground even then, because after at the Reformation, all the stained glass was smashed, and churches were very plain architecture with the green tinted cathedral panes.
You know, William Smith has actually signed the window. We, to the best of our knowledge, have the only one in Scotland that is signed. Why did he not sign windows?
He didn't sign windows because he was working for contractors. His signed windows are very thin in the ground. In his catalogue, when I went down to London, there's catalogues, there's in his file, there's photograph albums, and there's a wonderful catalogue of light fittings, metal light fittings, which he made himself. He drew he was a wonderful artist. He drew the light fittings, mostly pendants, and he coloured them with chalk and crayon and charcoal, and then he brought out the metal, highlighted the metal with Indian ink, and there were really great prints. Then he took prints, and those were his catalogues. There was very little on glass windows, just 3 or 4, and those were, I never traced many of them. The only window that I could trace was in the former Royal Commercial Travellers School at Pinner. And it's a beautiful window. It's a war memorial window, made in 1919, and he signed that. That would be a private job, but normally he obviously worked for a contractor. Who was the contractor? An NADFAS representative at Hartington Church, there to study the memorial window that William Smith built for his uncle, and signed that. The NADFAS representative stated that William Smith was trained by an artist called Francis Dixon. NADFAS means the National Association of Decorative and Fine Art Societies.
Right.
I think there's about 370 little groups of people interested in art. They all gathered together to form this society. Now, one of the representatives in Hartington Church stated that he was trained by Francis Dixon. Francis Dixon was trained by Clayton and Bell, and he was a Clayton and Bell artist. That opened up a whole new question. How come that William Smith, serving an apprenticeship with Thomas Potter and Sons, could at the same time be getting trained by Francis Dixon? So his uncle, I found, had James Frank Redfern, had worked in a partnership with Clayton and Bell. It must have been a big contract. It lasted 2 years, from 1868 to 1870. And I take it that Frank Redfern was doing the tracery work, and Francis Dixon was painting the glass windows, and they would be working hand in glove, got to know each other. And I take it that Frank Redfern approached Francis Dixon and asked him if he could coach William in glass painting. Now, the nature of glass making, it's got to run 24/7, 365, 366, because they mustn't allow the glass to become solidified in their kettles, otherwise they can bother. Yes. Clayton and Bell did green glass for the surrounding windows. Like you see the green glass here. Clayton and Bell did that. It was a good quality glass. And the trouble with green glass, if you consider a piece of of glass, it's a filter. It's stopping all the frequencies, but letting the green frequency through. Now, the heat is carried by the long wave, red, orange, yellow colors at the end of the long wave length end of the spectrum. So the glass is inclined to cool quickly, and so they've got to keep circulating it to keep it moving and stop it solidifying. So the place was open all the time, and William, through Frank, would get access to their studios. So William would be in his part-time in his spare time, working in glass, taking it in, showing how it was fired, showing how it was painted. Eventually he was a very highly skilled glass painter. Now, when it comes to proving that William Smith worked for Clayton and Bell, a bronze plaque photographed in William Smith's file. And it states that it's a memorial to the Reverend William Gordon Cole, M.A., who was rector of this parish, giving the dates of his rectorship. And it says the window on the right was the memorial to him. Will I go through that again? Yes.
Right.
In William Smith's file, there's a plaque made of bronze metal. And the method of manufacture is what's called repoussé. It's placed on a lead block, and there's various shapes of chisel, and there's knocked through from the back. And it's dented with the chisels. And this plaque stated that the window on the right is a memorial to the Reverend William Gordon Cole, M.A., who was rector of this parish, giving the dates of his rectorship. But where is this parish? If I could just find out. There's a window painted by William Smith, perhaps with his signature or with the name of the contractor he was working for. If I could just find out where this window was, I would have access to definitely a William Smith painted window, perhaps, hopefully, with his signature or with the name of the contractor he worked for. But how do I find it? I found out that there was a directory called Crockford's Clerical Directory. And I found out that there's a set of them in the National Art Library in the V&A, and also the British Library had a set at their branch in Redcar. And one of the archivists at Redcar said to me, well, it'd be a novel pity for you to have to come down from Ayrshire to Redcar just to do half an hour's research. So he very kindly did it for me during his tea break. And right through my project, I found this people bending over backwards to help and discuss things and exchange information. It made the project a joy. So I found out then that the parish where the window was in the church of St. James de Verdun in the village of Newbold, Verdun, which is about 10 miles from the centre of the city of Leicester.
Right.
So I got there, and the warden was kindness itself. He allowed me to stand on a table and touch the window, because it was so wonderfully painted that some of the parts I couldn't believe that they were painted on flat glass. I thought there must be some way that William Smith had put glass bulbs bulbous shapes on the glass, but it was smooth. And amazingly, there was no signature. And there was no name of a contractor. The plaque that I saw the photograph of was there on the wall, and I stood just where William Smith had photographed it, and I did the same. I photographed the window from the pulpit to get level right. So to go back to very near the beginning of my project, I was having difficulty finding windows by William Smith. And I went up to Glasgow to a company called Scottish Glass and Glazing, owned and run by a gentleman called Mark Banborough. And Mark Banborough, his wife is Dr. Rush of Glasgow University. She was trained at the Glasgow School of Art, and her subject for her thesis for her PhD was stained glass windows, Dr. Sally Rush. He gave me a few names of contractors that I could try if they had archives. And the last one he mentioned was Clayton and Bell. And we both laughed. This was a pipe dream. Clayton and Bell, they were the absolute acme of glass painters. Their stained glass windows are all over the world. So, to get back to this window at the Church of St. James, I had my photograph, phoned up Mark Banborough, and Mark said, look, send me a scan of it, Fred. After examining it, Mark Banborough said, there's absolutely no doubt. He said 90% sure, and then he corrected himself, 95% sure that window is a Clayton and Bell because their hallmarks are all over it. So he took in a deep breath and he said, William Smith was a painter with Clayton and Bell. So we've got the very best.
We've got the very best.
Yes.
Fred's book is available from Troon Church of Scotland, Church Street, Troon. KE10 6HT. That's Kilo Alpha 10 6 Hotel Tango. Or by email at office@troonchurch.org.uk. Our thanks to Troon Church of Scotland, the former St Meddan's Property Committee, the wider community, and to Joe Dorfman, Alistair Milton, George Mulvaney, and Ron Young, the photographer. Thank you for taking the time to discover the genius in the shadows. Fred's book is available from Troon Church of Scotland, Church Street, Troon. KE10 6HT. That's Kilo Alpha 10 6 Hotel Tango. Or by email at office@troonchurch.org.uk. Our thanks to Troon Church of Scotland, the former St Meddan's Property Committee, the wider community, and to Joe Dorfman, Alistair Milton, George Mulvaney, and Ron Young, the photographer. Thank you for taking the time to discover the genius in the shadows.